Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Right, thank you very much for coming. Now, as CJE Microphone before, we have been busy over the last little while. Now, a little while back, we did remade some A7000 backplanes, which it's not new, but it was relatively recent. But in addition to that, we kept running out of A310 backplanes, because there are some people that still want such things, and they were rare as the hen's teeth, so we've made some more, which very fortunately, in actual fact, well, it's a relatively straightforward board to design, but we found there was one very kind gentleman who's done an open source design of it, so there's no point spending time and effort doing it, so with his agreement, we are producing these again. So instead of having to charge like £139 for a second-hand one because they're so rare, but certainly less than that for a new one. Then we've also going back even further in time. Also back in the A310 era, VID-C enhancers. We were occasionally getting them in with systems and selling them, but we were getting not that many in, so the prices were getting quite silly. But we've now been able to produce our own. It uses some free software. Again, with their permission, it's pointless doing any work when there's regular existing VID-C software out there, so it helps people to use some of the older computers that otherwise they would struggle to get a monitor to display from. Then, again, sort of in the older things, socket boxes for Ethernet. Again, over the years we've bought up job lots of companies that have stopped doing stuff, and other ones we've got second-hand in job lots. But we realised, well, all the components are fairly readily available, so we produced some more of those. So Ethernet socket box, so people get a nice neat Ethernet network. Then, yes, now going back to the BBC days. I don't know if you recognise that. Basically, this is a ZIF socket that people used to put in what was frequently called the ashtray on the keyboard on the left-hand side. You put a ZIF socket in there, it fills it up, and allows you easy access to replacing your ROMs. We based it on a Watford design, but we did it differently because we found that there are some boards, some of these connectors, where they put pin 1 in sort of at the top, and then sometimes it's on the bottom, if you know what I mean. So what we've worked out was that basically, if we mount everything on the other way up, that does what we need. So we've made the boards so that we can actually connect and populate it either orientation, which is the reason why there's two holes. It's part of the case mounting goes through one of those. So that was a little development we did again. Either last year or earlier this year. Then other things that, especially for RISC OS 3 type computers, i.e. A5000 back to 310, so 301, 302, 3000, 4000. One of the biggest problems we've been having is Ethernet. Is that the availability of nets, no one's making new network cards. We actually have three, I think, left, brand new NIC network cards that we bought from a company after they cleared out after they used to produce. This was IQ'd when they eventually got rid of all their old stock. We did a deal with them and bought up all their old stock, so we have a few of those. And in actual fact, LSR are now producing a new NIC, but if it's not a 7,000 USB-C, if it's earlier, they are, well, we haven't got any stock, and so who knows when any will become available. They're very, very rare. So we did actually look at one point commissioning someone to do a new design, which would be so that it would do a module version and a mini module version. But when it came to the fact that we would be committing to about £20,000, we sort of realised that we would not be recovering our costs. So that unfortunately went by the board. But about a year ago, on one bulletin board, I saw a note that someone in the States was saying, "Oh, I've produced a RISC network card." Sorry, a RISC, Ethernet module, which yes would have been suitable. Oh, I now need to write the software for it. Now, a number of people have said the software is the difficult part. Much harder than the actual hardware, the software. Because like the existing boards, I did approach a number of the companies saying, look, could we remake some of your boards? Well, apart from the fact that some of the chips are available, after several years, they've never actually got around to giving us any information about programming them, layouts, or anything like that. So it's when we realised 20,000 was too much. But this chap, he said about a year ago, I could write software. But then we heard nothing, of course. And then another gentleman, Ian Jeffrey, who had mentioned something to do with what we were trying to do, he said, about months ago, he said, I've actually got a working Ethernet card now. Well, it's working as in he's managed to get some data to and from. It doesn't work under intra, which means it has to use polling, which means it's very slow, but he's part of the way there. And then I heard that, the chap in the States he has done some software and he's got it working to some level. So there are actually, and some of those definitely are going to be open source, so there will be the ability for them or us or whatever to produce them. So that is looking a lot more promising than it was, but we are certainly looking at something next year, not this year. Something that's slightly related to that, and is available to some extent now, in actual fact, is one of these units. Now this is a buy-it-off-the-shelf USB interface, and they do a lot of the work that's necessary on the chip there. So you don't have to write a full USB stack, which is a lot of work instead. Now, this can be, it's so early that the chap that's written the software for it hasn't actually yet officially released it, apart from people dabbling with it. So he hasn't said what license he's going to do. He said, well, I'm not expecting to take money out of it, but so we're very hopeful that it will be such a way that we'll be able to produce some of these. So basically, this goes onto a module, but on the module there is almost zilch. There's no chips, other chips on it. It basically is connecting up directly to the back plane, just a decoupling capacitor and possibly resistor. But that is, we hope to be doing that in the not too distant future. And in actual fact, there is a version of it that will fit in place of a Econet module in, say, like an A3000, which will be quite an interesting option to offer. So we're looking at doing that. Ultimately, we will be looking at trying to see if we can get one of these mini modules in particular that has the new Ethernet on board, has this on board, hopefully it's on there, and we're really trying to see what we can do in fitting on local storage. Some of you may know that we do the ZIDFS interface, which can be used, but it is the copyright holder of the software doesn't like it. He wants it's used as is, and with this documentation and that. So we're trying to do some look at seeing how we can do things, either complying with existing license or get the license varied, so that we could do excuse me, local storage and networking. It's one of the things that we know that a lot of the older computers that have had battery damage, like 3010s, 3020s, 4000s, 3000s, they, one of the things that can fail on them, one of the earlier things that can fail on them, is actually the floppy drive interface and hard drive interface. And therefore, it might boot up, but and the keyboard work and the mouse work, but pretty useless if you can't get anything in or out of them. So if we can produce a module that actually offers storage and networking, that is what we're going to be aiming to do. Also, in the sort of the retro market, which is I think certainly keeping us busy. I've always said I hope to retire to 40 hours a week one day, semi-retire to 40 hours a week, maybe 70, but I still haven't been able to do it. We're still just totally busy dealing with all this stuff. But one thing we did come across was, I've forgotten what it was, I don't think it wasn't from SJ Research, but it was one of these network units, that's network servers, that you connected up their special, before Ethernet existed, special connectors. Anyway, we managed to, someone had a job lot of these 3 servers, and we plugged one in, and it booted up and it was working. And then the next time we boot up, it didn't work. And looking up, we found out, yes, it uses a SCSI hard drive, a particular SCSI hard drive. As time goes on, one of the things, basically, the glue that holds something together inside the end stops gluing, and well, actually, it ends up, I think that the cover falls off, and then it glues the head to this thing, so it won't move. And so you can open up and put a bit of, someone's done a 3D printed bit of plastic that fits in place to stop it. But of course, that's just a short-term solution, because they're old, ancient 3 bits of rust. But talking to someone about this, they said, "What do you want to use? Blue SCSI." Now, I don't know, I'm interested to know, how many of you have ever heard of Blue SCSI here? Anyone?
So what SCSI?
Blue SCSI. It's basically, a box that allows you to connect up in place of the SCSI interface, allows you to use flash storage on it. And so if you've got anything that currently uses SCSI hard drive, spinning rust, do think about maybe making sure you've got backups. Everyone, of course, keeps backups of everything, don't we? But it's a thing that we would make. It's an open source thing. You buy the interface at £49 from a website, but I can recommend it, because it certainly meant that we had 3 boxes that would be just lumps of metal without it. Very, very useful for that. And then another thing that's we're not directly involved in, and a gentleman in the United States, he bought a couple of non-working RISC PC motherboards from us. And I don't know if you know, but there are various people around the world that have taken various Acorn motherboards and have reproduced the motherboard one way or t'other. Now, on a RISC PC, that's a bit more of a task, because it's not like reproducing an Atom motherboard, which exists in some of the other ones. But no, he's removed nearly all the components now, and he's got various issues of boards, and he's checking out schematics and that, and working out. He's thinking about doing some enhancements. The trouble is, though, when does an enhancement mean it's no longer a RISC PC? But things like the socket that the the video memory goes into is a very special one. He's got a batch of them, but the likelihood of ever getting any more of those is pretty low. So it's thinking of, well, yeah, do I do a different one and make some more VRAMs in a different format that fits into a standard SIM socket? Because that's one of the other things. Yes, 2 megabyte VRAM has been rather on the availability rather low. So, but we had a whole load of 1 megabyte Acorn VRAM, and we obtained the appropriate chips and found someone who fits the chips, the extra memory to the 1 megabyte. So we now have 2 megabyte VRAMs available, when at one point we were basically didn't have any. Right, now that's sort of all the older stuff, and then I should mention, of course, we do have right up to date, our Rapido TI, the titanium-based RISC OS box that we do, nice mini NLX case, I think it's called. We do have that on special offer today at $699, which is a considerable saving, and we have that. And if anyone's interested in anything else, well, so you want your questions now, public ones, if not, if you've got anything, thoughts, ideas, questions, even suggestions, please do come and see us on the stand. But thank you very much for your time.